Hi, welcome to KTV. I am Norma Mintz, and I am the Tanakh Department Chair here at RKYHS, and I also serve as the Israel Guidance Counselor for senior girls. And when I was first asked to speak about Parshat Vayera, I just told myself, I know that I need to speak about Akedat Yitzchak. And when looking at this Parsha, there are so many beautiful stories and so many beautiful messages, but this is a story of drama, this is a story of emotion and commitment, and there's so much to explore in this story. And particularly when I think about Avraham Avinu, when I think about what he's had to go through up until this point, it's such a difficult story. He has waited so long, Avraham has waited so long to have children. And first he's given Yishmael, and Hashem tells him, Yishmael is not going to be the son who will be the one that will be Hakamat HaBrit, who will really be the establishment of the Brit that Hashem gives him, but rather the Zerah will be established through Yitzchak. And Avraham waits, and finally he receives Yitzchak. And finally he's able to feel that the Brit is going to be fulfilled and that his life goal stands in front of him. And then what happens? Hashem tells him, you need to take Yitzchak and you need to sacrifice him to me. We can only imagine what is going through Abraham's mind at that time. Abraham has waited so long, and Hashem told him that Yitzchak is what he's waited for. And now he needs to abandon everything he's done up until this point, and he needs to give Yitzchak to God. The famous philosopher Soren Kierkegaard writes exactly about what Abraham must be experiencing through this process. In his work, Fear and Trembling, he describes Abraham as a knight of faith, and he describes what he must be experiencing emotionally as he's asked to do this act, which goes against everything that Abraham thinks that he's been working towards. And in fact, Kierkegaard describes it as Abraham being committed to doing the teleological suspension of the ethical. So Kierkegaard says Abraham is being asked to do something unethical. He's being asked to murder his child for the sake of God. And that really this is an unethical act, but he's adhering to a higher calling because he's fulfilling God's will, even though it negates what he sees as ethical or moral. Now that's an interesting point, but that's problematic. How can we look at this story as an inherently unethical story? Akedat Yitzchak is very fundamental to our faith. So a teacher of mine, Dr. David Schatz, looked at the story and looked at Kierkegaard and said, Kierkegaard does not understand this story. That's not what is going on here. So first of all, we need to kind of re-examine our assumptions here, because it's very possible that Avraham Avinu did not, in his society, have to assume that this was an unethical act. Child sacrifice was something that existed in pagan societies for a long period of time, and it's very possible that that was just something that was accepted as a norm within his society. But even more than that, Dr. Schatz said, this isn't really probably an issue of ethics. This is an issue more of will. That Avraham probably saw this as something that made sense religiously. That Avraham possibly saw this as something that made sense religiously, in that, doesn't it make sense that if we have a creator of the world who gives us everything, that we need to be ready at any moment to give it back to Hashem? That a recognition of God's true power and God's true dominion is also the readiness to give him what is rightfully his. So Dr. Schatz argued maybe this isn't an issue of ethics, maybe it's an issue of parental love versus God's will. He doesn't want to sacrifice his son because he loves him, and that's difficult, but that he has to really overcome his parental love because God gave him that child, God gives him everything, and that is what really stands as paramount. But even most of all, Dr. Schatz says, but the real misunderstanding that Kierkegaard has in the story is that he ignores the ending. He ignores that Hashem does not allow Avraham to sacrifice Yitzchak. That in the end, the story is about the ending. It's not about the command that is the beginning of the story, but it's about the command that ends the story. Where there, Hashem stops Avraham from committing this act. He sees his readiness, he sees his obedience, he sees his commitment, but he says, but wait. And I have to quote Dr. Schatz's beautiful words on this. He says, had Kierkegaard assigned the ending of the narrative due weight, he could not have sustained his thesis that religion is contrary to morality. The lesson we draw from the end of the episode is the opposite of Kierkegaard's. The lesson is that murder is never a legitimate way to worship the God of Israel, because true Avodat Hashem entails valuation together with obedience. The lesson that we can take away from Akedat Yitzchak is a lesson of true obedience to Hashem, a loving and committed relationship to Hashem, but one that says that Hashem is telling us to think about morality, to think about the rational and the ways that we need to interact with our world as we understand them to be true, and in doing that, taking our commitment together to worship Hashem in the way that is befitting a Jew. And no, it would not have been the story that it would have been had it ended in sacrifice. But of course, that's not how it ends. The binding of Yitzchak is his binding, his Akedah, but he is never sacrificed. And for that, we will always remember the lesson of Akedah Yitzchak. Shabbat Shalom, and thank you so much.